Prove to me that God exists, skeptics sometimes demand. Well, think about the word proof for a moment. Cold, hard, strict proof really only exists in a few very narrow areas of human inquiry, such as maths or logic. In most areas of human study, such as philosophy or art or history or even the sciences or law, for example, we don't rely on proof so much as looking where the evidence points. We weigh the evidence that we have and we determine what best explains the evidence. Let me illustrate. Imagine that I were to go for a walk in the woods near my house with my friend Tom. Now, I'm convinced that in these woods lives the Canadian national animal, the beaver. Tom is a skeptic. Well, after a few minutes walking, we come across some animal dung, some animal scat lying on the path in front of us. I point to it and I say, "Look, Tom, that's beaver scat, beaver dung, proof that beavers live in these woods." "No," he says, shaking his head skeptically. "Those were droppings left by the lesser spotted maple mouse." I shrug my shoulders, we walk on. A few minutes later, we see some trees standing by the side of the trail, bearing the clear signs of gnawing, of tooth marks a couple of feet off the ground. "Look," I say, "beavers bit those trees. Beavers have been at work in these woods." He shakes his head skeptically. No," says Tom. "Those trees were chewed by deer, very short deer with very sharp teeth." We walk on for a few more minutes and we come to a clearing in the woods with a big lake in the middle of the clearing. The lake has been formed by sticks laid across a stream, and in the middle of the lake is what appears to be a beaver lodge made of sticks. I point to the lodge and the dam and I say, "Look, Tom, what more evidence do you need? A beaver lodge, a beaver dam. Beavers live in these woods." No," he says. "There were heavy rains last week, don't you remember? And floods have swept through these woods and just arranged those sticks in a way that looks like beaver activity, but there are no beavers here." Well, as we leave the woods, I have to admit, I wasn't able to show Tom on that occasion a real live beaver. But we did see a number of pieces of evidence that are best explained by the hypothesis that beavers lived in the woods, whereas Tom had to engage in these kind of ad hoc explanations every time a new piece of data came up. I think something similar is going on when it comes to God. Yes, there may not be one single knockdown piece of evidence for God, but I believe the God hypothesis best explains a wide array of pieces of evidence that, taken together, point to the fact that God exists. We've explored some of them in this video series. With single pieces of evidence that on their own might not convince you, but taken together, the evidence leads to God. But one final thought. I wonder if it's ever occurred to you that Christianity is not primarily an argument, an intellectual position, or a philosophy. God primarily is not concerned with defeating you in some kind of game of intellectual chess. God primarily is looking for our trust and our commitment. Here is the evidence, says the Bible, and on the basis of that evidence, will you put your trust in him?